Gonna get into our final review. Again, this is a movie I have seen. Chris has not. It is a movie called She Said. She Said is a movie about the investigative journalist who ended up breaking the case of Harvey Weinstein. Harvey Weinstein, who ended up being a huge sexual predator, responsible for multiple sexual assaults and harassment among multiple actresses in Hollywood. And these were two New York Times reporters, Megan Tauhi and Jodie Cantor, who ended up breaking this story. You also do have an actress who was involved in those things in real life, who actually does make an appearance in this movie playing herself. And you do have some like voice performances here, not by the real people themselves. Like you have an actress who's voicing like Rose McGowan, who only talks, like you don't actually see her; she only just shows up in like phone calls. And then you have also like Harvey Weinstein, who's there. Like you don't actually physically see him; you just hear his voice like on phone calls and things like that. So this was a big thing. I mean, that happened. This was kind of a monumental thing, and, that happened in Hollywood, kind of rocked Hollywood. This was the birth of the whole, hashtag Me Too movement. That was huge. What do you remember mostly about the kind of Weinstein stuff kind of going on and when the news broke, and what was kind of some of your first reactions to it?
It was one of those things where I wasn't completely shocked because I had heard stories about him being an asshole to multiple people in the industry, but I hadn't really, I don't have deep ties into Hollywood. Like, I know people who work in Hollywood, but I've never heard stories from them about anything like that. So it was like kind of this bomb that just kind of went off when all the allegations came out against him, and then how that ended up leading to so many other people like Kevin Spacey, like Louis C.K., like, you name it, like just tons and tons of people who have done these horrible, horrible things in their position of power and abusing that power. And it was a good thing that my dog is barking, and I hope that's not coming through. It's kind of distracting me from talking about this really important thing. But yeah, it was a really, like, when it happened, I was like, oh fuck. And like the effect that it caused, it's like, good, this needs to keep spreading, and these horrible things need to stop. And unfortunately, like nowadays, it feels like they're still going on pretty regularly and not a whole lot is being done about it anymore. And so I'm glad this movie exists. Like, again, I haven't seen it, but I'm glad it exists to remind people of this. It's like, hey, this shit happened and it's still happening, and we need to do as much as we can to fight and prevent it from happening as much as possible. So yeah, like, I haven't seen it, you did. Does this movie do a good job of like showing all the importance behind it and what went down and the work it took? Or
Yeah. It's interesting because this movie, the way it starts off with, them talking about Donald Trump and them kind of doing some investigating on him and all the allegations that, with him that was going on during his presidential campaign going on, that got unearthed when he was running for president in 2016. And you have Carey Mulligan, who's playing Megan, and then Zoe Kazan, who's playing Jodie. Zoe Kazan, she was in The Big Sick. She was like the girlfriend of Camille Nanjiani in that movie. And then Carey Mulligan, she's been in tons of things before. She just recently was in that movie. God, what was that movie that just recently came out? That was she was like it was kind of like a revenge film.
Promising Young Woman.
Promising Young Woman. Yeah, she was just in that movie that I liked, which is kind of has a little bit of a similar message kind of going on in a movie like this with She Said there. But so it's kind of interesting how it that kind of first starts off there of kind of talking about how this stuff kind of happens and what goes into discrediting a woman and discrediting the work that kind of goes into these type of things. Again, you don't actually physically see Donald Trump either, just another vocal performance here, a voice that somebody's doing a voice and through like a phone call. And it does show a lot of the work that kind of goes into just a lot of these stories, kind of just of women coming out, and you do see a lot of like you don't actually ever, which I think is smart. You don't actually ever see the physical assault, so it doesn't feel kind of like it's exploitative in a way of what these women went through. You see the aftermath, like you see them like with their shirts ripped and them crying and them kind of running away, but you don't actually ever physically see the action or anything like that, or even like okay, you see it for a little bit and they cut away, which I thought was good. I thought that was maybe a good decision that they didn't do that. And you just kind of see a little bit of the aftermath of it, and you see kind of how also sad it is too of a lot of these different women who kind of they came into the industry, you know what I mean, and it wanted just to be a part of Hollywood, right? They wanted to work and they just wanted to do something. It's like, hey, I wanted to work on the set and have be a part of this life, and then to see how this turned out, and that's also kind of very sad to see that, and to see the work that kind of goes into trying to get these women to come forward, because when you see these two reporters, who are both women themselves, and trying to help and convince these other women, like, hey, it's going to be different this time, you know what I mean? Because when they like on the conversation with Rose McGowan, she's like, well, I've tried to come forward before and nobody was there for me, so why should I come out now? Like, why is it going to be any different? You know what I mean? It's going to be the same situation. Or women just go like, well, this person's just too powerful to take on. Like why even try to fight this? So you do it does go into a lot of that work, especially movies about investigative journalism, something like Spotlight that we've seen, or something like All the President's Men. You know what I mean? Seeing like these kind of monumental kind of things. And you spoke about how well did this movie does it conveying that? And when I heard about this movie, I was like, wow, this seems kind of recent. That what I mean? Like, wow, they're making a movie about this stuff already. You know what I mean? I don't know. It seems kind of recent. And it's going to be interesting to see, like, maybe 10, 20 years from now when somebody watches this movie, because this is such an important thing right now. It's kind of going on when this was happening. That's very, a story that kind of was a big story that happened in our lifetime, in our time period. How is it going to be, looked upon and upon other generations of people? Is it going to be looked upon with the same level of importance as it is now? And I guess only time will tell. Speaking about things like, Spotlight, which was, the breaking of the huge, sex scandal that went on in the Catholic Church. And then speaking about something like All the President's Men, which broke Watergate, stuff that was more monumental, you know what I mean? Like for maybe my grandfather's generation, that as opposed to, something like me, in my generation or your generation, or our generation there. So it's kind of interesting to see how this movie will be kind of looked upon there. So, I think, this movie discussing these things and and like you said, it's still going on. It's still very prevalent. You know what I mean? I'm pretty sure, in every single industry possible, not only just in movies, but just in music, and, every single facet of maybe corporate world, or just even in just your regular work environment. I mean, this stuff is kind of going on. And I, be interested to hear, a woman's perspective on this as well, of how well, did she see the movie, and what she kind of thought of a lot of it. We spoke about kind of some possible Oscar nominations for like Mark Rylance or Terry Russell for Bones and All. I wouldn't be surprised if Carey Mulligan or Zoe Kazan, if they get nominated for this movie, like Best Actress or Best Supporting Actress. I wouldn't be shocked if they kind of get nominated here either. Especially a lot of the, I think Zoe Kazan does I hope I'm pronouncing her name right. I really do. I think she really does a fantastic job here. Seeing a lot of the emotional reaction she has to trying to help these women and trying to help them come forward and what they kind of went through. And, seeing a lot of these women, and like when you're also dealing with other people in their lives, like this one scene where she tries to go talk to this woman and her husband is there, and she, the husband ends up trying to prod of like, why do you need to talk to her, and why do you need to speak to my wife, and what's going on and what happened it's also pretty kind of heartbreaking there. So I think, what I mean, it's a strong film, strong performances. I think it's not very. I don't think it's exploitative at all. Again, I'd be interested to hear what a woman thinks about the film, and to see her kind of different her perspective on it, and kind of thoughts on it. But I didn't think it was very exploitative whatsoever. Of trying to milk this movie for like the juiciness of it or anything like that. And it is a very somber film. I will say it doesn't definitely put you in a good mood at all, or it doesn't have any kind of lighthearted moment. You will feel kind of down maybe after watching the movie. It's like, damn, that was pretty heartbreaking. So yeah, I'd give it a tune in for me, for She Said there. And it's not very flashy in terms of filming. Like it's very kind of bare bones in that terms. Almost like it feels like kind of looks like a documentary in a way sometimes, which I think adds to the investigative journalism kind of nature of the film too, which I think is nice. Yes, for me, I'd give it a strong tune in for She Said there. All right. Are you interested in seeing this movie?
Yeah, I will get around to seeing it soon. Like maybe I know it's a Universal movie, and Universal has this thing where, like, after a few weeks or maybe a month, they'll put their movies on streaming if they don't open above, like, 50 million or something like that. Because I know this movie isn't making a whole lot of money, which kind of sucks given that it's such an important subject matter that it's about. But, yeah, I definitely want to see it. Yeah, Carey Mulligan is a fantastic actress, and I like Zoe Kazan a lot. And, yeah, the trailer did give me Spotlight vibes, and I was hoping that it wouldn't feel like it's trying to mimic Spotlight in a way, in the sense of like, hey, we want this to be like our big Oscar caliber journalism movie. But with you telling me like no, this feels earnest. This feels like, hey, this is important, and we want to remind people about this particular thing that's still infesting so much of our world. It's like, yeah, I definitely want to see that and show some support for it.
Yeah, because I think this movie, it bombed in the box office, if I'm not mistaken. I think it bombed there. Yeah, it's like one of the biggest flops there. So, which I don't know how much they were expecting money wise from this movie, because I imagine the budget's not pretty high on something like this. But,
Yeah, it didn't look very much from the trailers.
Yeah, it says the budget here is $32 million. I would have guessed lower. I would have guessed way lower, but I don't know.
That's not for a movie of that type.
Yeah. Yeah. So like I said, it's more kind of bare bones. It's something like that. Like I was Googling. She Said, to look at the box office, look at the budget here. And you remember that movie Bombshell? Remember that movie?
Yes, I remember that movie.
See, that movie felt a lot more like sensational. You know what I mean? Like a lot, because that was about like the whole Fox News scandal of like the sexual harassment that was going on there. I don't know. That felt a lot more kind of like sensational to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's what kind of put me off of that movie a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. So, thinking about that movie.